he was really the one to encourage that part of the story. And I said, okay, we'll try, and then I feel like my challenge from that at that point on was to not write a sci-fi book.
Right.
Like treat this like this is a thriller. These things are real. They're not going to become, we're not all in the Matrix. It's not some sort of super, it can't, it's not beyond much beyond what we already know exists.
Hmm. Welcome to our latest episode of Book Reporter Talks to our guest today is Alex DeMille, and we are going to be talking about his final novel that he wrote with his father, Nelson DeMille, The Tin Men. It was an instant New York Times bestseller, which I absolutely love to see. And it, as were the first two books in the series. So this is something where, we've already got an audience built for this book. We've always got people loving these characters, and it's really great to see everybody's there for the third as well. In her review for Book Reporter, Kate Ayers, our reviewer, said, The Tin Men is a grim look into the future of warfare, which I hope never comes to fruition. Technology, though, is advancing so fast that I fear we already may be capable of creating automatons such as these. But a machine with the capacity to do what D-17s can do in this story, without the counterbalance of mercy, compassion, or any number of other human emotions, just might foretell the end of us. She also says The Tin Men is Nelson's final gift to us, but such a wonderful gift it is, and I hope that Alex will continue to follow in his father's footsteps. Sure, he's got some big shoes to fill, but I'm confident he will succeed. So with that, welcome, Alex. So great to see you.
Thank you, Carol. That was quite a review. I really appreciated it. Good to be
Yes.
here.
And she's reviewed all of your dad's books. So it's, coming
Yeah,
from like someone who's seen the progression of everything, somebody that, didn't just come in to do this. So the last time I interviewed you and your dad, we were in my office in New York, and I asked for a full description of the book, and your father turned, I'll never forget this, it was so funny, he turned and said, Alex, why don't you take that one? So with the spirit of your dad in mind, how about if you take that and tell us about the Tin Men?
sure. He never liked that question, but it's you have to do you be pithy. I'll do my best. The Tin Men is the third book in the Scott Brodie Maggie Taylor series. They're a male-female Army CID team, Army detectives, but it's a standalone story. You don't have to read the other two. It's essentially a murder mystery. The setting is a fictional place called Camp Hayden in the middle of the Mojave Desert in California, where they are doing secret experiments involving elaborate yeah, war games between a platoon of human army rangers and a platoon of what they call lethal autonomous weapons, or as Scott Brodie calls them, killer robots. And the Brodie and Taylor are sent there because a scientist has been killed by one of these things. And the question is, was it programmed? Was it sabotage? Was it negligence? Is it something more frightening? Like these things became more intelligent than they were supposed to be. And if I could just say one quick thing, there's a lot of the people hear that this pitch, and I think I've seen that, I've heard that, I think about the Terminator and things like that. With this book, I was really thinking about it almost as if the army base itself in the middle of the desert was like a remote manor, like in a closed circle mystery, and somebody here is up to something. Somebody isn't who they say they are, and nobody can go in or out once they're there. So I really had a fun time with the kind of claustrophobia of in this harsh setting where you have all these people who are kind of in this pressure cooker together with these things, and having to figure out what happened.
There's locker room feeling. They go in, hand over your
Yeah,
cell phone. Any calls going out, going to be monitored. Anything that's going on, you really have absolutely no way of just like you're going to whisper amongst each other, is basically what it's coming down to. And
right.
at one point, everybody sneaks off in another direction. Don't want to, get too much there, but okay, so The Deserter was a hunt for a man who deserted the army. It was last seen in Venezuela. Bloodlines took place in Berlin. It was about an investigation of the murder of one of their own. And here's the hunt for this murder, this major who was killed. What drew you to this scenario? Like we've moved back to the States. Why not another foreign country?
I think I don't know. I guess why I don't know. I just knew I had this feeling. Just I wanted to write a story set domestically and about set in America about America. I mean, The Deserter is sort of about the United States by way of Venezuela and Afghanistan. Bloodlines gets into like larger trends about what's going on in the West and the rise of certain far right movements and the history of the communists, and et cetera. But this one I want to be more direct about, like, this is about us. I'm thinking about our future. It affects the whole world, but I'm an American, so I'm thinking about the future of our country, the culpability of our country, and of course we have the most sophisticated um, military hardware in the world, and the most powerful army that's ever existed in the history of the world. So it just seemed like this is the place to do it. I love the desert. I love the American Southwest. It's one of
Hmm.
my favorite places, and I always kind of wanted to set something there. Sometimes I just take things I love or I'm interested in and just mash them together and kind of see what's going to happen.
Yeah, you knew this was a series from the beginning, so you've got to get these characters to be themselves as the book goes on as well, because
Mm.
it's kind of remembering, like, okay, what would Scott do in this situation? What would, she do in this situation? How would they interact with each other? And part of the play that's really fun is the two of them together. And she's off at one point and he's like, oh my gosh, like, where is she? Is she safe? Is everything okay? Was it fun developing them more as the three books went on? Because you knew who they were from one and two.
I think I got more and more invested in them, and I kind of fell in love with them more as the books went. And I think I had more fun with them. And I think when I wrote Bloodlines, it was a little hard. I had to kind of catch up and remember kind of who they were from the Deserter.
Hmm.
And I think between those books, between Bloodlines and this book, they something clicked. And they kind of just became more through the course of writing Bloodlines. They became more real to me, and
Yeah.
I felt I had an easier time accessing them right back into where they should be. And it's difficult with the series because you want, like, we all change. Most of us don't change dramatically in like 2 hours the way it happens in a movie, but you want to kind of track their relationship and have something grow or something die, whatever it is. You want something to be evolving or devolving through the course of the
Mhm.
story because my father was always he wrote these plot story oriented thrillers, but he was always like character, character, character.
Mhm.
Nobody if you don't care about the person, you're not going to care whether or not they get shot.
Mhm.
You have
Mhm.
to be invested in the people. So
Yeah,
I really took that to heart.
that's true because really with everything, it was all about the character. It was character were put
Yeah,
in danger, characters were put in places, but you really got to know the people. The characters are,
yeah,
the story, Okay, your dad wrote on longhand, as we all know, on legal paper, legal pads, and didn't use a computer. I feel like when he passed away, yellow, like, legal pads, like the use of them, like way down. I mean, they should
yeah.
have been
Right.
voted
So at
immediately,
least
right?
one company went out of business.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's one company
yeah,
that you're taking a hit right here. So
right.
the idea of the book taking on autonomous weapons that are powered by relatively primitive I can't picture your father even thinking about AI. Did he have this idea, or where did this one come from?
Believe it or not, I don't remember which one of us came up with the idea, but it was almost the last ingredient because I was like, I want to do something set domestically. I want to do it in the desert. I want it to be at a isolated because Berlin was like across this huge city.
Yeah.
Venezuela was across this vast country. I wanted to play with just locking everybody in a room kind of thing. So I had the idea for the setting, and then was reading a lot about. I was just interested in like the psychological, you know, things that play with elite uh, soldiers, like in Deserter Delta Force. For here, I was talking about Green Berets, Army Rangers, and I wanted to do something involving performance enhancing drugs and drug abuse. And then we came to, okay, they're in this secret place. What is it that they're doing? What is so secret, And I don't know which one of us came up with it, but I got afraid of it, and I said, no, 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 that's way too sci-fi for a Nelson DeMille book. We can't do it. He said, yes, we can. We can. He was the one pushing it. And I was like, okay, well, maybe we can do robotics, but we can't do AI. He's like, no, no, we got to do AI. Everybody's talking about AI. Don't. He's like, don't shy away from it. Like, just take it head on.
I love it.
And this is his instinct as a right through his whole career, right? He's always, even at 80 years old, he even if he certainly doesn't understand. He didn't understand AI or robotics, but he understood that it was important and that it was
Mhm.
part of a conversation, right?
Mhm.
So he was really the one to encourage that part of the story, and I said, okay, we'll try. And then I feel like my challenge from that at that point on was to not write a sci-fi book.
Right.
Like treat this like this is a thriller. These things are real. They're not going to become we're not all in the matrix. It's not some sort of super, it can't, it's not beyond much beyond what we already know exists.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
to me that's more interesting. It's a more realistic, understanding of where we are and where we could be in 5 to 10 years.
Yeah. Which is, I mean, AI, I feel has come on like this. When the internet happened, it was sort of like this, and then it went like this. This, I feel like, is a hockey stick, like big spike. Everybody talks about it. Everybody's using it so they don't need people. We don't need people because we're now using this. It's interesting because you can run copy through it every once in a while. It does make you sound smarter, I have to say. Like I can definitely sound smarter, but it's just overtaking everything so quickly of, what's going on and what's happening. And I just feel like there's the way the book is structured and the way you're talking about it is so real that this could be happening. This is so real that this could be something that we're working on. So you went out to the desert, you went to an army base. So what was that like in your favorite part of the country in a sandstorm, you know?
That's right. Yeah. Fort Irwin is the Army's National Training Center. It's in the Mojave Desert. It's not a little camp. It's a vast, and the area of the camp, including all their training grounds, is the size of Rhode Island. So they have this huge area out there. The purpose of it is that they train every unit in the Army goes through there. They were saying everybody, and the idea being, at any given time there is a unit that freshly just fought a simulated war at Fort Irwin. So there is a permanently stationed unit there who is kind of the enemy, and then American units come in, and when they come in, they have to bring everything with them. They have to bring their own helicopters, their own tanks, their own medics, their own everything, as though you were going into to occupy a place. Um, so they do twice a year. They bring quote unquote creatives out there from Burbank in Blackhawk helicopters. So yeah, one morning I go to Burbank and there's all these very serious looking people, men and women, and they're and they're fatigued. They're in their dress blue. I think it's blues now. It was blues and it was greens. I think it's blues again. Giving us donuts and coffee and just being extremely friendly. And of course, this whole thing is a PR thing with the Army, but they did it really well because I came away just thoroughly impressed with these people. I didn't what they do is so hard, and they've set this training in one of the harshest environments you can have in the country. So anyway, we flew out there, and as we're flying, we leave LA and we're going out to this base, and the helicopter pilot had said to us, yeah, we were supposed to be there all day. And he said, I got some bad news. There's a sandstorm coming. We have to kind of cut the whole thing short. So I need everybody back in this helicopter at 12:05 p.m. I'm like, that's extremely specific.
I will be in my seat at 12:04
Yeah,
ready.
yeah. So then we get there and they were like, okay, we're gonna do. They wanted to make sure we did everything you would do in a whole day. We just did it really quickly. They're like, okay, go meet the military spouses and have a talk with them. Okay, time to have an MRE with a soldier. And I live in Brooklyn, and they sat me down with this 18-year-old kid from Brooklyn, and
Oh,
he never left Brooklyn until now. He's in Fort Irwin, which I found so crazy, and I thought kind of amazing. So he and I are talking, and he's helping me figure out how to like heat up the food in the MRE. And it's like, okay, time to go. We're
great.
gonna go learn how to clear a room, and they like hand you like a rifle. Anyway, but I was what there was a line that I may have yeah, there's a line that a colonel said to me as we're flying in, that I don't know if the line made it in the book, but the idea behind it was like a huge part of the book. We're out looking out at the desert, and he says to me, I can point out and show you everywhere that I've died, because
Mhm.
he's done these trainings over and over and over again. He can say, I can show you where I died, I can tell you why I died, what I did wrong.
Right.
And that kind of found its way into this book with this platoon of rangers who were fighting this war game over, and Fort Irwin is it's more realistic. They build up and they do a 2 week thing, and then they kind of take a break. This was a For mine, it's more of they do this same battle over and over and over again. It's almost like a perverse Groundhog Day thing, and
Yeah.
they're all quote unquote dying over and over again, and it's like their bodies are not being harmed, but their minds are being kind of ravaged. And I thought that was an interesting
Yeah.
dynamic.
Especially since you always want to win. Like you want to win the war. You want to win
Right,
what's going on. We're such a winning culture, as opposed to if you lose, looking at why you lost to go in a different direction, to go do something differently. It's always just the win is what's, in mind. And the
right,
army's different from when your dad was in there. Like your dad was in, combat in, Vietnam, different place, different time, different world. But did you feel like he still understood what the army is today, like what it is like today? or were you sharing, this is what it's like?
Well, there was some factual things that I think, particularly with Deserter, where I would check on things and we're like, this changed in 1992, or things that were no longer the same. But that wasn't that stuff. But you want to get the facts right, but that wasn't the important stuff. I feel like the culture, specifically of the enlisted people, and then how the officers and the enlisteds interact or don't interact. I mean, I can't speak to this, and I'm not a veteran, but my understanding from talking to veterans, younger than him, is a lot of that is what it is. It doesn't change,
Hmm.
and if it does change, it changes in degrees. It doesn't change fundamentally.
Right.
And what's kind of the idea behind the idea of the military doesn't change. The idea of the oath, the idea of like kinship, and also all the various stresses that you're under,
Hmm.
even in peacetime.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
and this business of, practicing war and losing, practicing and seeing,
Right.
what's going to happen. So the autonomous weapons that you've created are 7 feet tall, which I found was,
Mhm.
you don't know anybody's really 7 feet tall. I think I have one friend who's like 6'10", Okay.
Right.
They're metallic humanoid machines with 2 arms, 2 legs, large torsos, and I love this bucket-shaped heads. And the face has only this 4 inch long horizontal slit. Did you sketch these out? Did you and your dad sit there, or did he know what they were going to look like?
He had an idea for what they should look like, and I didn't use it, but I used the idea behind it. I did use. He said he was talking about I think it was like Roman, and it was some sort of like warrior masks that they wore in ancient Rome. I can't remember what they called it, the centurions wore. He's like, yeah, they should be wearing those, so they were really scared the hell out of everybody. um,
His love
and it
of
ended up
Rome
not.
comes through. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
exactly, exactly. Which finds its way into this book. I mean, there is references to Rome that will come
Yes.
through.
Yes.
But the idea behind um, building them to be terrifying, the part of the
Hmm.
purpose of them is to scare the hell out of you.
Hmm.
They're not. They don't have a benevolent sheen that then comes away. They're not shaped like dogs. They're not. They don't have a pleasant voice. They're just straight out of the gate. Like that's part of the point of them. And I think there's a line in the book about, people understood the significance of that ever since the first guy smeared on war paint. Like this is a part of war is the intimidation. So do they need to be 7 feet tall? Probably not. But you know,
It works. But it's
yeah,
also, I hear them clanking in my head. Like I didn't hear like you're going to come down the corridor and I'm going to hear them moving. For some reason, that's what I was thinking when I was sitting there. And maybe they're not. Maybe they've been silenced. But that's what I was thinking.
right.
Clank, clank, clank
Yeah.
coming towards me. Um, why do I feel like I'd be more afraid of them than an actual soldier? And what you were talking about is they just had a reason to shoot. They didn't have heart and soul. They just had the body. So
Right.
think about that. I mean, they're terrifying when you think about it.
Yeah. I mean, it's like anything now with AI. I mean, you give something an objective and it's different permutations of how it gets that objective. It can be completely um, you can't predict it. It can be completely unpredictable. With this, you know, as we understand what's happening now with autonomy and robotic warfare and stuff, we all know that we have predator drones that can be somewhere across the world, and there's somebody pushing a button, and I think probably a lot of people have a moral and just like psychological problem with that. This
Mhm.
kind of death from afar.
Mhm.
But then you have to ask yourself, does it matter to the person being killed
Mhm.
if they see the face of the person who killed them or not? Like, does it really, like, how is that worse? It's definitely more unpleasant to think about as the aggressor. But this idea of even in war, which is one of the worst things people can do, fighting each other, killing each other, um, you're forced to either face the enemy's humanity or you're forced to do something to dehumanize them, to
Mhm.
kind of like short circuit your own empathy. And of course, that comes with a cost, but that's what people force themselves to do.
Mhm.
And what is it when you don't even have that, right? It's just taking the last little piece of war, humanity out of war is to me very disturbing and
Yeah,
interesting.
but I know someone who was in Libya and he called his mother one morning and he goes, I just want you to know I'm okay after the battle last night, blah, blah, blah. And he says the um, kids in their late teens and their early to mid 20s are really great at this, shooting down drones. It's like computer games. And he goes,
Right.
it's amazing how they nail them immediately. He said, because they can hone in. And he said, the skill they have from video games is what's in war right now. And I found that so
Yeah.
interesting because it is true. You're not fighting a person, you're fighting something that's in the sky. And he said, we took them all out last night. I want you to know I'm okay. And she was
Oh,
like, wow, like she knew there's a battle. She didn't know he was there, but he wanted to make sure she knew. And it was just a different way of calling home and what to say.
yeah. 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 It's so interesting. It's because on one level also you think, well, it, the best case scenario for this is that you're putting fewer humans in harm's way,
Hmm.
right? But um, does that? But that maybe that's only on one side, right? Not on the other side. And the one of the barriers to fighting a war is risking the lives of the people who are fighting it.
Hmm.
And what
Hmm.
happens when you take that barrier away, right? Like, I
Right.
mean, the
Yeah.
entire war on terror too. We never would have invaded the tribal lands of Pakistan, but I think various presidents seem perfectly fine, firing missiles into it from the air. So a lot, a lot to think about.
Well, I had a friend who was, one of these people who had been in the military, but beyond that, they brought him in because he could find things like in deserts, like he could seek
Mhm.
this out, and he was sent to find the weapons of mass destruction over the desert. Like they said to him, you're going to go in and out. One of those things where leave your wallet at home, you've got a different personality, you're going to go in. And it's really interesting to hear about the dark war that happens on the other side of things. I'm going to go in, I'm only going to go to this cave, take this one person out, and get out. And it's just such a different way of thinking of it. And now we've got these menacing creatures that, this is what ends up happening with them. This is what, we've totally taken the people out of the war. We've gotten to just, we're not going to send a guy into the cave. We're going to send one of these people into the cave, you know?
Right. Yeah.
They can't
Yeah.
clank too much. That's the whole thing. They can't do
Yeah. They
it.
gotta be quiet.
But we also say they don't have any creative intelligence. They're mighty adversaries. And Brody notes that these are serious shortcomings for machines with the power to kill. This is warfare. I feel like a lot is hanging in the balance, and it could be all too real. And I think he's seeing that of like, is this where we are? And is this really where we're headed?
Yeah. Yeah. And he Brody was a combat veteran from the Iraq War. So he's thinking about these things and there's right. I mean, there is as a human in war, I imagine you're aware of the difference between a combatant and a non-combatant. Certainly, we know plenty of instances where people don't respect that, but you're aware of it, and you know that you're supposed to make that something important. And I was researching about autonomy and weapons and stuff like that. A lot of what I found was that distinction that we don't think of as that complicated for a machine. It's actually a very complex thing to figure out because you have to
Mhm.
make lots of split second judgments at the same time, and they're kind of subjective, right? Like you have to, is this person, it's because they look like this, they're a soldier, and like that, they're a civilian, but then they do this and they act this way and they turn to all the things that would go on in your head as you're assessing a threat. It's very difficult to have a machine, artificial intelligence of any kind, do that accurately. And because it's you're trying to see if you can make something autonomous, the stakes for it to be right are so high, right?
Mhm.
You can't have this thing make mistakes. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's interesting to think about. Wait, our creative intelligence is really hard to replicate.
Hmm. Well, I like that they're called circus tigers by the general on the base. Like he's just seeing them as these circus tigers running around. And they're called self-driving cars by Carolyn Dixon, who's a scientist. So you see how they are viewing them in different ways. Like this is a
Right.
circus. This is something that's, okay, fine, we're going to bring it out. Let's see what happens. And she is seeing it a different way. And I feel like things like that make such a difference. Like how people in on an army base are going to view something like this, how people are going to view how we're going to use this. Is it going to be, as you say, for good, for bad? Where are we in the middle if we go to this?
Yeah, yeah. And one of the officers on base reassures Brody and Taylor. He says these bots, they're never in possession of a lethal weapon. Like they're never given a gun that's loaded. He's like they are the weapon.
Yeah.
Like are they? They're not. They look like they're shaped like people, but they're not. What difference does it make what they're holding? So it is this kind of strange the fact that they're anthropomorphized kind of makes it into like a weird mind game.
Hmm.
They could just be, they're not shaped like a tank. They're not shaped like, something else.
We also have to think about what their voice would be. It's like every time you think of someone robotic, you think of like Al, that iconic voice, like, oh, blah, 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 blah. Did you hear a muted robotic voice as you were writing this, as like, what they would be doing?
I did. I kind of, it was hard because I mean, I hear all the human voices when I'm writing, but so that was always harder to figure out. Yeah, what did that sound like? It was funny because I was talking to Scott Brick, who did the audiobook. He's done the audiobook for most of my dad's books. He did Bloodlines and The Deserter, and he's an incredibly talented guy. And he said, I was really trying to figure out I was thinking ahead to what these robots should sound like, and then you really helped me out by having me read, Hal's lines from 2001 towards
Yeah.
the beginning of the book. He's like, and that kind of helped me modulate to the right thing.
So I got a question. Is Scott Brodie in reference to Scott Brick? I was thinking that as I was reading. I was like, was this a homage that, like this was?
I inherited that name. My dad and they were developing the idea for this male female team, so I inherited that name. So I don't know.
I don't know.
I'd like, maybe we can say maybe.
Wouldn't that be sly of your dad to do that? Wouldn't that be just a thing? Like, oh,
Yeah,
where'd the name come from? Well, there's this narrator who's narrated all of my books, in case you didn't
right.
realize. Anyway. I also love that the creatures are named after baseball greats and their numbers. So talk to us about this, like, why baseball?
My dad was saying he was always, if you have a story and the hero is confronting some sort of henchman or bad guy or whoever, and you're not going to say their name, you don't know their name, but you have to distinguish them somehow. You could call this guy's got blonde hair, or this guy's got a scar. Whatever you do, you have to, like, through the point of view of the main character. And he was like, you can't call these robots, Unit 1, Unit 3, Unit whatever. In the military, everything's got some nickname. Everything's nicknames. There's slang, there's all this different kind of. So they're numbered. So yeah, we came up with the idea of, well, let's have that be related to jersey numbers for sports. And I think at first it was we would pick famous players from football and hockey and whatever, and then it landed on the idea of, well, this is America. This is about America. There's no more American sport. Let's just focus on baseball. Unfortunately, neither my father or I know anything about baseball. He didn't follow sports at all growing up. He didn't follow sports, and then he didn't follow it, so I didn't follow it. So we were both pretty clueless. But we both obviously know a lot of people who do. So it was a friend of mine he's like a huge Mets fan. So he was very happy to give me a bunch of Yankees names for these killer robots. But and actually the kind of main character robot, named after Bucky Dent. So his name is
Mhm.
Bucky. That was from John Cart, the CEO of Simon Schuster. I think I named him after, maybe it was Wade Boggs. And he's like, Wade Boggs, really? Not Bucky Dent? And I'm like, I don't really know who either of those guys are, but okay, Bucky
We'll go
sounds
with Bucky
sounds
10.
good.
We'll go with Bucky 10.
And of
Yeah.
course, I looked it up after. Also, Bucky Dent, maybe Wade Boggs is also still alive. Bucky Dent is still alive, so that made me feel a little bad for naming this thing after the guy. But
It's okay. I'm sure it'll be homage as far as he's concerned.
right, right,
It's so
right.
funny because I never thought of your dad. I thought of your dad watching football on a Sunday afternoon. And it's hard to think that I got pictured him sitting there with the scotch, watching and commentating on the game, like giving his feedback as he always did in every situation. It's like you were wherever you were on a film set because you had what was going on, and then you had him sharing what was
Right.
going on in the room. Am I right? It's
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely. Absolutely. I don't know. He liked football. He played football. He liked the sport. I think he always liked the idea of playing sports. He very encouraged me to play sports. I'm sure he'd go to a game, and he would probably, I'm sure he'd probably gone to probably every Super Bowl. He went to a Super Bowl party, but he was there for the party, not for the Super Bowl. That was him.
Yeah. Well, it's
Yeah.
always funny. I would start writing him, and then all of a sudden my phone would ring. And I'd say, wait a second, aren't you on deadline? He goes, yeah, yeah, but this is different. And we would sit and talk for an hour, and he would just
Yeah.
the greatest stories. Huge fan. And, he was just one of those people who was so supportive. He walked in the room at our 10th anniversary party, and I was made. I was like a made person because Nelson DeMille walked in the room. And he was just a kind of generous guy. And the last time I saw him, he was at a bar. He was drinking his like fourth scotch of the night. We were at a party, and he was just, it was for Doug Brunt. And we were sitting there and we were just talking. and we were trying to talk him into taking a car home that night. Like, and it was, but it was that last time I saw him, and we just were having this wonderful chat. He always asked about my kids. He always asked about everything going on in my life. I don't know how he remembered it. Probably because he wasn't watching football and remembering that, you know? So,
No,
but
he was incredible, and every anniversary, every birthday,
yes,
everything. He was
yes.
always you get a message. Sometimes you get some unexpected gift basket in the mail, and
Yeah.
it became a running joke with my friends and I because they'd come over and it's like my apartment. I have like a 2 foot long like salami, and like where the hell did you get this? Like, oh, did your dad send you another gift basket? So I always had all this ridiculous food, and it was such a wonderful way of him, wonderful form of expression of love and caring.
Totally. I went to do an event out in Garden City. He says, I can't be there that night. So I get there and there's this large arrangement of flowers, like this thing. And he says, I just want to make sure I had some presents there that night. And he was the most generous person when it came to that, of remembering things. He'd actually read our newsletter and comment. I'd get a note on a Monday morning that I know was typed by his assistant because he didn't type, but there was always something there. Then he'd find the smallest thing and just write me a note about it. And that
Yeah.
doesn't happen with a lot of people, that they get that kind of a response from an author when they're sitting and writing to them. It was from the heart, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. He really valued the interpersonal connection, which is why he didn't like email, because to him, email felt like email made communication trivial. So it doesn't
Hmm.
surprise me that he read every one of your newsletters and responded to them because that was he just didn't want things to just go into the ether. It's like you're communicating with me, I'm communicating with you. And I think probably having them everything printed out on paper as a stack on his desk instead of in front of a
Yeah.
screen like the rest of us maybe helps that too.
I remember the first time I got a text from him, I didn't believe it was him. And I was like, whoa, 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 who is texting me? And he goes, yeah, I kind of got this down. And he says, I've got an iPhone. And he says, my son got an iPhone and I got an iPhone. And I just was laughing because he's sitting there and he's texting me back and forth and he's pretty quick. And they're like, whoa, this guy doesn't need a typewriter, but this texting thing he's got under control, you know?
I'm proud to say I was with him when he got that iPhone. I took a trip to the Apple store with him and my brother, and then family friends who was my dad's age, but like into this stuff, which my dad was just rolling his eyes the whole time, and it was pretty funny. He started sending GIFs all the time too,
Oh,
which
really?
like reaction GIFs. I couldn't believe it because I'm like, I don't even know how to do this sometimes. He just,
No, 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 no.
you know,
That's where he would surprise you. That's where he would surprise you. And he
yeah,
always said your brother was keeping him young. He said, because I have
right,
to learn these things in order to communicate with him. And he says something
right,
that he goes, and he's lost his AirPods already and he's using mine. So he says, so this is, and he's always saying, like, these things are all so expensive. Like, he would always tease me about that. Like, it's like, oh my
yeah,
gosh, you go this phone. It's like having a computer in your hand, you know?
right,
So funny. Funny.
yeah,
Well, I also love this moment where Brody dismisses Bucky, who's one of the autonomous creatures, and he's got this humor and goes, "Nice meeting you, Bucky. Hope they recycle you into tank armor." And it feels like, okay, it's both your humor. You both have the same that humor, that sly, like, yeah.
right. Yeah, I that was that was my line, but there was definitely times where I felt like with this book specifically, I felt like I was channeling him a little
Mhm.
bit, through the characters. But the deserter. I was like, God, this is so bleak. Like how and we need there's got to be a laugh somewhere. And of course he would come and provide it. And I think by now I'd like to think I've kind of figured out how to use these kind of archetypal heroes who are these lovable, sarcastic, people. To do that because ultimately what that is too is it kind of fits into the book too because it's also another expression of humanity, right?
Right,
like
right.
like what is like will these things ever be able to be funny? Like I have a hard time with that. I mean maybe, but
No,
you know
probably not. Probably
yeah.
there's no sly wit coming out of these
Right,
characters. But
right,
everybody else around them has the opportunity. But that thing about, like, we could recycle you, it was like so perfect. It's like, and how is this thing going to react? Because it has no personality, zero personality.
right.
There's also a line that incompetence and recklessness lead to tragedy, but so does evil. And, I thought about the people that were at that camp. They're like dealing with these creatures, like, all day long, and they're not winning against them because they're fighting these, fake wars of, like, what would happen. And what is like for those people all day long? It's like humanity's gone and you're losing to something that's not even human. What's it like for
Yeah.
people that are losing all day long? You don't have a win.
Yeah, and it's presented as these things are training the Rangers for like the next generation of warfare, and then you start to realize is it's the Rangers are being used to train these things for the next generation of warfare. It's like who's actually being trained here.
Right.
And now we're just being used as target practice in a way, and it's just a dehumanization. And I like to think the story has some hope in it, where it's about how a certain way in which these in this situation they people manage to reclaim their humanity
Hmm.
and fight back.
Yeah. But then
Yeah,
there's this chase scene that you're picturing being so terrifying of these things are after you. They're coming after you. They're pursuing you and what they were programmed to do. And how do you go up ramping up the tension when something like that is happening? You've got a metallic creature
mm,
chasing a person. And what I found those chase scenes were like very vivid in my mind of what you were running from and hiding
yeah,
and where they could
yeah.
find you. Yeah.
Those are fun. They're really hard to write. I gotta say.
Yes.
Also, again, that's another thing that I I could do at this book because of the last previous two books. And that's something my dad was always very good at. I think he has an amazing boat chase at the end of the Cuban Affair. He always had these great action set pieces. Better than most screenwriters, and he was really really good at it. Um, uh, I think it's partly just about blocking. Some of it's just thinking about the mechanics of like where people are, and you always want to make sure that you're not giving your characters an easy out. If they're going to get away, they really have to earn it, and
Hmm.
put as many obstacles in front of them as possible, but not so many as that it's completely unbelievable. So it's balance, and I think it's also about kind of slowing down time a little bit too, to notice the moments, things like that.
Well, you were a screenwriter before you became this novelist. And it's interesting because so many times screenwriting is somebody just writes the chase scenes, somebody just does this. I remember it was being compared on The Wire that somebody was just painting the floorboards. Somebody was just doing these different parts, and all the parts had to come together. And I was talking to an author at one point, I was talking to Greg Hurwitz, and he says, "Yeah, I was hired to write just the chase scene for I forget what movie it was or whatever." And he says, I wrote it. The movie may not happen, but I wrote that chase scene, that like, what they're
Right.
going to use and stuff like that. So it was interesting for you being a screenwriter. Here in a book, you're doing all of it. You're not just doing, and it's also their words before it's an expression. Somebody's looking some way, like looking that way. There's so many more words on the page than being a screenwriter. What was it like
Right.
adapting to do that? You have to say everything.
Yeah, it was a hard adjustment for sure. Because you on the other hand, I mean, like a well-written screenplay, you you know that the actors and the director are going to fill in the blanks, but you also don't want the blanks to be felt while you're
Mhm.
reading the screenplay. You as the reader, who is most often for a screenplay, somebody who's maybe going to be involved in it, maybe be giving it money, you want the person reading it to be able to visualize it in their head. So
Mhm.
they're the ones filling in the blanks as they're reading. So it's not that different. Of course, you do need to it needs to be fleshed out more, and the language has to flow in a different kind of way. It can like screenplays have a certain kind of staccato rhythm to them sometimes with action. Books can too, but that's not usually how I write. But when you coming back to the idea of only writing a chase scene, I don't know. I don't know how people do that. I mean, I know how people do it, but I don't know how it works all together. Because to me, it's all one thing. And
Mhm.
if the chase scene isn't telling the story, then what's the point of it?
Mhm.
So like whatever happened before the chase and what's going to happen after the chase is being developed through the course of that too, right?
Mhm.
I came up with major ideas for the story while writing the chase scenes. Like I didn't know what was going to happen necessarily, and
Mhm.
the choices I made weren't based upon, oh, this is going to look cool or this is going to be exciting. This is again hammering home what the story of this book is.
Yeah, where it needs it, what needs to happen with the action at this point in the book to move the
Yeah,
story along too. It's interesting because the other books would be harder to produce and become a film. This one would be easier because it's such a contained environment, and so much of Hollywood right now is looking for a contained environment. Like, is it all in one house? That's cheaper to make. It's all in one
right.
this. Could create the robots out of these machine men out of AI. You could actually do that instead of having, creating the actual things. Such an interesting thought of like how they would do this as a film compared to the other two books that were getting all around Venezuela. I mean, everything right now they want to have, oh, it's one set. Yeah, that's good. We can green light that.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Not have them leave the
Yeah.
house.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think it's gonna make a good movie. And I think between, yeah, practical effect and I mean, I'm a nerd who doesn't like CGI. I love when I like see a movie that still does it the old-fashioned way, you know. I do think there's something to that. But probably the best examples are movies that, oops, sorry, manage to combine both of them in a way where you don't even see the seams.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think this could be. I think it could be. I mean, I've seen YouTube videos that people have made with computer animated AI robots, and you can't even tell that they're not real. And
Yeah.
that's just people on YouTube. So,
Yeah. So, yeah, and that's what they're looking to be able to do. Like any way we can
mhm.
save the money. Oh, the characters get too
Right,
expensive. Oh, we're not gonna make that show anymore. Oh, it's
right,
too hard to
right.
shoot that house on top of the hill. Oh, that's out.
Yeah,
Very
yeah,
interesting. Right. It's like when you watch Bosch and that house up on top of the hill. I remember Michael Connolly saying, we shot all the scenes for that like in 2 days because you had to clear the street and
right.
all the directors had to come in and shoot that scene. And it's something that stays with me if you watch the show and you're like,
Yeah,
I can understand why that's an expensive show to produce.
it's wild. But even like my wife is she's a cinematographer and she's working on a show right now for Netflix. And they do that too. They have a very particular set where it's either a location or a built thing. There'll be this rotation of directors coming in because they're all different episodes. Yeah,
Yeah.
this director comes in, they do like 4 hours, then they leave. Other director comes in, and and she's there the whole time, and she's just working with these. Yeah, her boss changes, depending on the time of day. It's wild.
Exactly. Meg,
Yeah,
Megan Evan was describing, she was doing her cheerleading movie, and she was talking about how they only got the field to shoot those scenes for 2 days. And she just
my
kind
wife
of
shot
observed
that.
it. She did? Oh,
My
she did.
Yeah, yeah,
That was like so well done, but Meg was explaining like what was going on. We did an
yeah,
event and the other author didn't show, so we had her to go talk about it. And it was so interesting because she said, you're shooting, like she says, you're shooting one, you're doing something with two, and then all of a sudden you're shooting four and they want to change on one. And you're like, wait a second. She says, you just don't sleep because the whole thing. So I'm sure that's exactly what
yeah,
your wife was saying about that show.
yeah. It's a whole TV is a whole other thing in terms
The
of
whole thing. Series.
wrapping your head around it. Yeah,
Yeah, series.
yeah.
So, did you have the story mapped out before you wrote it? Like, did you know where we were headed on this, or?
No,
No.
I didn't know. I didn't know who done it. I didn't know even far into the book. I didn't know, and I think that's kind of fun because you're not you're not you're not risking telegraphing anything because
Right, right,
because
right,
you as
right.
the writer, though, you're kind of more the point of view of the main character. Of course, then you can go back and plant some clues and things like that. But I did not know where it was going to go for
Yeah.
sure. And but I spent the whole book building these things up. These
Hmm.
and the the more and more powerful and frightening you make them, the harder it is to even imagine how you could possibly overcome this. And that was the challenge to think about. Okay, I've really made I've given myself a very hard job here, and
Yeah, it's really, really difficult.
it
So,
has to pay off.
you and your dad wrote the treatment for this together, started
Yeah,
writing together, then he became ill, and you work on your own. And you write something at the beginning of the book that you were really writing your way through grief because your dad, look, none of us expected that this was going to happen. Like, he got sick, maybe he'll get better. And then it was like, poof, and it's hard then for us that we're just, fans of his, friends of his, but to be a member of his family, to be sitting there dealing with the challenges of there was a lot of things that need to happen. And at the same time, you're writing this book that you're working on that you two would have been writing together. That's a lot, Alex, that, hidden at once. It
yeah,
really is a lot, you
yeah,
know?
yeah. It almost I can't even tell you how I did it. I don't know.
I don't know.
I just went into some sort of state, I think I'm like I have to get through this, and in a way, this is allowing me to channel him, but then
Yeah.
also not be just focused on like a lot of times with grief, it's just you're just sitting there feeling the person not around,
Yeah.
and this was I guess something a way for me to be more active, you know.
Yeah. And yeah, and it's also, you're dealing with the emotions, but you're also thinking like, okay, I want to make this book. I want to, this is our last thing to do, and I want to make him proud. And I want to sit there
Yeah,
and write. And you're thinking of him the whole time because I mean, Nelson's wit makes it into my head a lot during a month. You know what I mean? You're
Right.
just thinking like, what would he be saying? You watch something on the news and you're just thinking like what he would say about like, what's happening in the world today. And he's just one of
Yeah.
those people that was like iconic like that. So I can picture there's a huge pressure to write this book, but at the same time, my gosh, what a gift to be able to do the last thing you were doing together. It's
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
last thing. So the beginning of the book has got, let's get back to the book, it's got this beautiful map that really comes in handy as time goes on. So I
Yeah.
understand you really like maps. You're a map guy and your dad was a map guy. So you got
Yeah.
this.
I love maps. I love looking at them. Yeah,
Let's look at that.
it's a
I
little
don't know if it's going to come up really
overexposed, but
clearly. There we go. There we
yeah,
go.
there you go. Now it's better. Yeah. Yeah.
But I love that,
Um,
especially there were moments where I needed this to figure out where everybody was. And I'm like, wow, that's great.
it's I especially love maps of imaginary places. So it was really fun to make one. And it wasn't my idea. My editor, Colin Harrison, suggested it. I'm like, oh, it's a great idea. But it also meant, oh man, now this all has to make sense. So I kind of, I was reading the book and drawing the map, and then I had the map, and then I went back and read the whole manuscript with my own map, and then I saw parts in the manuscript where that doesn't make any sense.
Right.
So sometimes I change the map, sometimes I change the words, and it gave me a couple story ideas too to actually
Yeah.
visualize it like that. So it was cool.
To be able to do that. Was the title always The Tin Men? Was that always it?
Yeah, as soon as we landed on robots, I just had that. It just popped into my head. I don't
Oh,
know
so
why,
perfect.
but yeah, thanks.
Tin Men. And was this cover the first one you saw, or did you play around with the covers?
We played around a long time. Actually, I came up with that cover because not to knock it was a hard one to come up with because there was questions of, oh, well, should we feature the robots, and I was
Hmm.
like, no, we should not. Maybe we should feature the desert. And they actually came up with their first cover. I liked it. Was kind of more desertscape, but it I don't know, it didn't quite pop enough, and I thought this was cool. It was like, how do we fuse this idea of humans? I mean, dog tags, most people know this, but soldiers wearing two dog tags, they're there. So if they die, you take one of them off with their information, and they're kind of combining that with this. If you can maybe make it out there, it's a binary code.
Hmm.
So it's a way to kind of combine these two ideas of human warfare and high tech stuff, and it spells something out if you put that into a binary converter.
How fun. That's another good idea there. Okay, now I'm gonna have to go do that. I'm gonna figure this out. I'll get it to one of my sons. They'll figure it out.
Great.
Because then it's a binary code for me. Do that this afternoon. You know what I mean? So the audiobook's narrated by Scott Brick, and I listened to a piece of it. And he's been a long time narrator. I still think the character came from there. I think that's a slot. We'll tell Scott that's where the character name came.
Sure, why
We'll do
not?
that. What about his voice resonates for these books? Where does he work? Where does it work so well?
I mean, there's something kind of like authoritative, but also soft about his voice. If there's a way that makes sense, like, so you kind of there. It's not harsh, and you just, I don't know, you just want to hear him. But he has a way of, again, capturing the characters without changing his voice too much. So he just does it enough. I know he was the voice of John Corey also, so it's
Yeah.
interesting to see
Mhm.
how he kind of changes a little bit for different characters, but they're not that different. So he just is able to kind of modulate it well in a way that I think just works.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
when I was listening to it, I was like, you're right. It's the modulation. It's sitting there trying to figure out what the people are going to say, how the characteristics are really going to come through. And it's more than just a reading of the book, it's an acting. Do you read your book aloud at any point? Do you do that?
I probably talk to myself while I'm writing, but so either way. But I don't. No, I don't read it aloud. I read it. No, I read it in my head many times, but not aloud.
A lot of people have been saying they've been reading it aloud for one reason is audio has become so big. It used to be like your rights to Finland. It didn't really like, hey, okay, fine, I'll buy like a handkerchief. But now it's like really mattering. And as a result, the flow of words, the flow of are you repeating a word, things like that end up to be different. And I hadn't really thought about that. But what works on the page sometimes, people may even gloss over a word, whereas there they're going to hear every word that you're
That's right.
saying,
Yeah.
which is
Well,
really
rhythm. I mean, rhythm of language is very important to me. So I definitely, like, I hear it in my head, and the cadence of So I guess I'm hearing myself reading it in my head. I just don't do it out loud. But I do think that, and now I'm a father of a 7-year-old, so I'm reading out loud all the time now. I read to her. I've been doing it for 7 years, so I can now really appreciate good writing versus bad.
Yes,
You
yes.
know, I started reading her Tolkien, and I love reading her Tolkien. I'm like, this guy can write, you know, and it's part of it is the rhythm of his language is so beautiful. So yeah, that's always been important to me.
Yeah, it's always been a big thing. Yeah, and it's interesting when you do start reading to children, it's like becomes this really big deal because all of a sudden you're realizing, wait a second, this is really not that good. And we're going to probably have to read this every night for 2 weeks.
Right. Yeah, you're like, oh no, but she likes it.
I used to say to my husband, do you want to hide the book? Like, is that what you want to do? Because he was a much better reader of the stories than I was. And it was like
Yeah.
the little girl across the street came in for Halloween and she's not even 2. And I've been giving her the How Many Bugs in a Box books, like these pop-up books. So I got her
Mhm.
Halloween bugs. So she comes trick-or-treating and I hand her the book and her eyes get really big. She opens the book and she starts popping the things up. And then she sits down on the front porch and
Oh,
starts
that's really
going through
sweet.
the book. Made my night. And
That's
then they
very
get
sweet.
home and they texted me, they said, we've now read the book 3 times. And I was like, I don't know what she'd be apologizing or telling you, glad you got new material. It's like,
Right, right.
but it's just like really fun. And it's, this is what's going on. Well, I gotta say, that you are such a good writer unto yourself because I saw what you did with this book. And I know that a lot of it was your writing on your own, wherever the idea came from. So I hope that there's something next for you. And I hope that there's news about something next for you because I look forward to reading a book where Alex DeMille is the name on the cover. And I know there's somebody someplace that's going to be cheering for you as well. You know what I mean? Because
Thank you, Carol.
it's a lot to have taken on doing this, especially with everything that was going on in your life. And you really, really pulled it off because I am thinking about this book during the week. And I was like, okay, now what would happen if, this ended up happening? Really,
Yeah.
it's
Well,
interesting.
thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah, I will hopefully have news to share on the a solo book
But,
soon enough.
yeah.
So
And then
yeah,
you can
soon
get
enough. But
writing. You can get writing.
I should have started writing already, I think, but
Just know
I'll
sometimes
get there.
pressure is a good thing. Come on, sometimes pressure is
Oh
a
yeah,
very good thing. That looming
absolutely.
deadline.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, your
That,
father
that
used to
nothing,
say,
nothing like it.
yep, your father used to say, there's the deadline. I hope it moves. And I turned
Right,
around, I said,
right.
no, I think it's really the deadline in order to get the book to come out. So you
Yeah,
honored
yeah.
him with this book. You've honored the fans with this book. And more than that, you've really shown your own writing chops. And that's like a real good achievement. So next time you'll come back. Yes, when you finish
Yes,
writing,
of
come back.
course. I'll be here.
Okay, great.
I'll be here. I'll be here in a year or so.
There we go. There we go.
All right.
Everybody else, we look forward to seeing you next time. Alex, we look forward to seeing you next time as well. Okay.
You too. Thanks so much, Carol.
Okay. Thank you.